Hello there and welcome back to Massalia Tales. In the previous episode we faced another attack at Io when the Massalia tribe came at us with loads of Javcav. We were though able to take them out with massive storms of arrows and once again defend the settlement. In Italy I was pressing against the Illyrians, believing them to be weak, and managed to draw one of their garrisons out into a battle with Acronius. It wasn't a very hard affair, our infantry were superior and we were able to gain the maneuver advantage as well. So we destroyed the remnants of their army, their garrison army, and were able to take territory as a result. Now in Mesopotamia I wanted to counterattack the Egyptians who had captured Edessa from us. They looked pretty strong, so I decided to actually break off that siege and hang around, especially when I saw they had more forces on the way, but they did catch up with me. For some reason though, their second army didn't take part in the battle, so I was able to take a very sneaky, favourable engagement and destroy the first of 3 Egyptian armies in the area by simply outmanoeuvring them, especially because they had mostly pikes which were easily able to be taken down with cavalry. Now let's continue. Although Sparta had been offended by Massalia forcing their hand with the drachma, now that they had become tied to the Republic through mutual enemies, they became dependent militarily, an ideal scenario for the plotters among the Timukoi. Their cooperation greatly threatened the Illyrians, sat in between the cores of these military powerhouses. But as with many historic alliances, the issue of the day became not whether Illyria could be defeated, but who would gain their lands when they fell. Both sides needed to race to secure the lands they needed, but the more resources went into the land grabbing, the fewer were available to stop Egypt or Carthage from breaking their outer borders, a fact the powers in question recognized with delight. We're right back after the battle with Egypt, and the enemy's army has been totally destroyed by that fight, their general sneakily escaping there. Our army in really good shape except for one cavalry unit that was attacked by the enemy's chariots and did surprisingly badly. So that army is sent away, a great start to this conflict with Egypt, which is ramping up. Their ships are still taking down Spartan shipping, which is quite annoying. I was trying to hunt down their fleet, you may remember, but failing because they could run away faster than I could chase them. But now that second stack they brought up to support decides, you know what, I do have movement points, I am going to come in for this battle, but unfortunately the first battle's already over, so they didn't get the chance to attack me with 2 stacks. I'm just going to run away from that stack because I've actually got other plans for this force. I don't want them to take any losses in battle, and their plan was basically to come and save Hatra, but as we can see it's a little bit too late for that. The enemy have already made an attack with yet another army appearing from their territory. So this is a battle where it could be possible to win, but it's likely to just grind down to an eventual defeat. So fighting it myself might give the enemy more casualties, but it's not really worth it. So I'm going to take the auto-resolve. They're all a defeat, so we'll just take the aggressive stance because that means we'll do the most damage possible, hopefully, to the enemy's force and reduce the chance that they can move on immediately to go do something else. So you can see the enemy's army actually takes loads of casualties, losing basically half their men, which was quite nice, but they are going to take Hatra from us. Now the Illyrians ask for peace. I have to pay them for it, which is incredibly misguided given the balance of power and the way this war is going. I give them the usual deal of peace if you be my client state, and they refuse. They are too proud for that, so the war is going to continue. Now I thought they might make an attack right away. Sometimes the AI likes to offer peace just before it makes an attack on you for some reason, but it didn't happen this time, so that is all good. Now next up, one of the minor Arabian powers, Maine, decided they wanted me to pay them for a non-aggression pact, which again, very cheeky of them. I asked for a free one, and then they came back in saying if we pay them they'll attack Egypt, and that was actually an interesting offer because they're right next to Egypt's core and they're not at war with anyone else, meaning they will actually have a stack or 2 that could go and take part in that conflict. So we might have bought ourselves a nice little distraction down there at some point in the future. Now we need to deal with the Egyptian situation here in Mesopotamia. It's not looking all that good, and Epinetus and his army needs to make a decision about where we're going to go. I want to try and get back to Seleucia because I'm pretty sure we can hold them there. It's got a full stack garrison and walls, of course, so it might be nice to draw the enemy into Seleucia and then try and kill them all in one defensive battle. But I'm going to have to go a pretty long way to get there thanks to the fact they've taken Hatra. If I try and go around Hatra, the enemy will be able to just attack me with all their armies at once and even the Hatra garrison. So we're going to take a more conservative route. It possibly would have been an option to just attack Capture right now, try and take it back, but Epinetus isn't the most confident of generals, so he is not going to risk it right now. Now over in Italy, you may remember I've been holding Arretium at siege using Kronos and the shields of the city, and that was simply so that I could move Acronius over to help him out, and when he does that, you can see the auto-resolve is very nice, so we'll take out that garrison army with no problem. So although we actually had pretty good numbers down the auto-resolve, we take a lot of casualties, more than I expected considering how small the enemy army was and how big ours was, especially because ours was elite and upgraded, so unusually high losses, but that's another settlement captured with ease. We are going to have to just sit in that settlement now to replenish our army. Luckily our replenishment so fast, we're only going to need one turn in there, so that's lovely. Acronius as well going to head back east to Arrhenium, the settlement he just captured, in order to get more replenishment. So once those two armies are done replenishing, we are in a pretty good position to just keep pushing on Illyria in Italia, so we'll do just that. And we've got another attack on Illyria we can make thanks to Eustochus now arriving at the front from northern Europe, bringing his army towards Sergestica here, where there's no army defending it. We can't quite reach it this turn, so we can't get things started, but next turn we should be able to start a nice siege there. So I'm looking around because I know I've got another army somewhere. It's Cnothus and the Claws of the Peak. There they are. And they are going to be heading down to help us try and push Carthage out of Iberia. You might remember my vague strategy was to not focus on Africa and possibly let Carthage take our territories there in exchange for really focusing on them in Iberia so we can unify the areas closer to our core. So I come in here to Tarraco and there's a massive garrison inside, including 5 units of leveled up heavy cavalry. So this is a particularly difficult settlement to take. But we've got Eurysthenes as well, who can come in with a support army to make life a fair bit easier. Now I did need to actually break off the siege with the Claws of the Peak and make it so that Eurysthenes is doing the siege. That's just so I can get rid of the zone of control, so that the two armies can move to stand next to each other, which will mean if the enemy sallies or brings in reinforcements, my guys are in reinforcement range. I don't want to be besieging from either side of the city, it's a little bit dangerous. So there we go, we've got 2 armies besieging the place. It's got a fleet inside and a massive garrison, so still fair number of defenders inside, but not at the same caliber as our troops, so nothing too much to worry about. And we can actually make it even easier by getting Kronos with the Vengeance of Atlantis to come up and start a naval blockade. Now the downside to this is it stops the enemy's navy from running away if they were planning on doing that, but the upside is the enemy are going to take double attrition. It's going to cut the siege time from 8 turns to 4 turns, and it pushes the balance by even more in our favour. So it probably would be possible right now to just auto-resolve this assault and take the place, but I hadn't decided whether I actually wanted to do that, especially because the losses were still considerable. It'd be nice to take this with basically no losses, so I thought I'll start building siege equipment, see if they sally, and just make a decision about going in for an assault. Fair play to him, he caught us red-handed. Looks like this will all be Timucoi land soon enough, but I know I can convince him. You see, old Eurysthenes isn't one of those beasts driven by the money. He can smell the practical side of things, and it's going to be quite easy to argue that Tarraco is logically council property. It isn't just some colony or subjugated land, this is a merchant paradise. It's the Massalia of Carthage, by the gods. Among all the Timucoi, only Eurysthenes has a chance of understanding what all that means, so we're still in with a shot. Besides, with the host of uncomfortable Timucoi troops beneath me, it is perhaps better to let the big man be the supreme commander. I must really twist their loyalties up like the gods know what. Moving on now to Epaphroditos, who is moving up to the Caspian coast to take on this Egyptian garrison. It unfortunately was more powerful than us, so I thought we might as well hold them at siege because my allies might step in to help me out there. Over here, the Bactrians have captured Amul, which makes it easy for Actor to decide what he's going to do next. We have to attack Bukhara, and inside, only a very weak army, so we'll just auto-resolve them out of existence, and that'll be yet another loss for the Egyptians. Combined with the Bactrians, we have very rapidly taken a lot of Egypt's territory in the far east, although they themselves are still holding strong in the centre, but eventually these forces will be able to come back and perhaps turn the tide. Now I really wanted to liberate a faction here, because holding this random settlement in the middle of nowhere is going to be quite difficult, but unfortunately I couldn't, so I had to take it, and we'll have to just see if we can convert them to be Hellenic. Now in the Persian Gulf, I've got Herodotus leading a fleet up towards Charax here. There's not much he can do, as you can see from this balance bar. The garrison inside very powerful in comparison to him, so we can't attack or sneakily steal it from Egypt or anything like that. So we'll just blockade it and see if it distracts them. That's a possibility. They'll send an army to come and relieve the blockade, which will distract it from doing something else. Now after I clicked end turn, I forgot I'd actually ordered another blockade to be set up at Sinope, another Egyptian coastal settlement, this time Evios leading the Black Sea fleet, and it's kind of the same situation where we can't really do any damage in an attack, but I can just blockade it to see if they react in any way. Not necessarily going to have any advantage for us, but we'll just do it since we've got the opportunity. Now, moving into Carthage's turn, and on the subject of blockades, in fact, they decide to bring a fleet over to break the blockade made by Kronos here on Tarraco, and they're going to do it quite easily, because you can see they've brought 1.5 fleets, since the fleet inside Tarraco will come out to fight as well. So I thought I won't bother contesting it, since I was only really blockading this place just to give these ships something to do. There's no point losing these ships over it, so we'll just move away, and the enemy do not pursue, so that's fine. Their fleet, now free to move out of Tarraco, actually runs down towards Iol. For some reason, Carthage is very determined to take Iol, even though it means abandoning Tarraco, so it now has even fewer defences against my siege. And in fact, they can't muster enough forces to actually attack Iol properly. They come in with a half-dead army over land, and of course the fleet landing only has a very limited number of men because of the small crew size, so they don't get much on the balance bar. So because of all this, I decided to just auto-resolve that to a victory, since we've already seen 2 defences of Iol, and this one was going to be pretty much the same deal. So we get a close victory, both the army and navy attacking, killed about halfway, and our garrison still taking heavy damage, but not that it really matters, and of course they'll be replenishing every turn. Now the Illyrians start moving forces about, pushing the Spartans back in Italy and going on the offensive there in Macedonia, and then moving more forces northward through Italy, it seems. Their fleets are also moving about in the sea. I'm not really sure what they're doing, but I suspect they might be planning a counterattack to move north through Italy, since they have forces in the area, and they may just ignore the fact that Sparta has an army in Italy, since they're just letting it sit in the corner, but we'll have to see what they do, of course. Now, one thing they did do to me was an agent action against Eusticus, which is actually taken away half of his movement points. Luckily, they did it at such a time that doesn't matter at all, because he's already right next to his destination, Segestica, so he can just come right in and start this siege. The army inside, nothing special. I could probably take it by auto-resolve with, say 40% losses, but I thought I'd actually do that manually just so we can take it right away and still have a strong army in case Illyria counterattacks, but we'll do that later on because that's not important. Let's go through the rest of the turn first. There's the Spartan army hanging out in Italy. The Illyrians have another army nearby which might go after them, so they're probably in trouble. But one thing we can do to put pressure on is simply attack Rome. It turns out, though, they actually have another army in Rome, so the big city is going to have a very big defending force, because of course it has a giant garrison as well, but that's not going to stop us. Especially since we can deploy 2 armies when we bring down Acronius against them, so it's going to be a 2 versus 2 in terms of stack sizes, and might as well just get this going. So we're going to start besieging the place. They have a giant advantage at first, of course, as Cleandros comes in. I'm going to start building some siege equipment, because we're probably going to need a few different siege assault directions in order to get inside this town. I am planning on doing a manual siege assault here because I think that could be fun, and you can see we have a small advantage, which is a perfect situation for doing a manual assault, and of course it is Rome, so that seems like a very fitting place to do a nice epic battle against Illyria there with our 2 armies. So we'll just need a couple of turns to prepare that equipment so that we can get in, and we'll see what we can do in the meantime elsewhere in the war. There's always Carthage to bring down, of course, and they've got these fleets hanging around here in the Western Mediterranean, and I thought I might as well just kill them. So this fleet right here near doesn't run away, even though it's really damaged and has a smaller number of ships than my fleet, so don't know why they're willing to just let themselves be killed, but fine, we can just get a nice auto-resolve and sink that fleet easily. So we have basically wiped out one of the 2 known fleets in the area, since they already got half killed trying to fight Iol. They seem to have more ships already in Tarraco, so I think they brought more in, but we'll just go and blockade those guys inside as well. Now there's actually an army coming in from the east, which I was thinking of bringing down, but since I can't reach it right now with the ships, I'll just let them continue to come in. They can't move very far per turn, so once they get close, we'll just sink the army that's coming in, so basically it's going to wait for them to sacrifice their troops again. So here at Tarraco, we actually could just auto-resolve an assault, but I hadn't yet decided if I wanted to do a manual assault here as well, just because it might be interesting, but given how much of an advantage we have, possibly not, so I'm thinking I might auto-resolve that and then do the manual assault on Rome. So now back over in the east, Epinetus is going to be taking that long route round to try and get to Seleucia before the Egyptians show up, and unfortunately for Epaphroditos, these Aryan forces nearby are unable to reinforce him if he makes an assault here on the settlement, so I'm just going to continue to siege them out. There's no particular rush to take that place, and I realised one thing I could do to help Epaphroditos out actually is bring Actor down, because he doesn't really need to be up here in Bokhara anymore. The public order situation wasn't very good, so I recruited a new dignitary to deal with that, and hopefully over time they'll stabilise, and now this massive cavalry army can start moving in, and it will only take 2 turns to move all that distance because it just has so much movement, thanks of course to being all cavalry. So if we don't get reinforced during the next end turn sequence, we definitely will after that once Actor shows up, and we can have a nice easy victory against the Egyptians and then storm with those 2 armies to go and help Epinetus. I decided to end the blockade of Sinope that was conducted by Evios since it was a bit pointless, and instead just hunt down this random Egyptian admiral who was hanging out here in the Black Sea. Not that they were going to do anything either, so this is still pointless, but it's just getting ourselves a victory against Egypt. And for some reason they don't run away. There definitely seems to be something about navies and not withdrawing from terribly unfavourable battles that I guess is just a problem with the AI, but there's nothing we can do about that. More kills for Evios. So now finally in this turn, I am going to make this assault on Segestica. We have a giant advantage. We even have artillery here, so it'll be nice and easy. So we'll just skim over this quick battle and then see if the Illyrians will do anything about it afterwards with the forces they've got hanging around. Now, the most important thing is to not do anything the Timbukoi tell you, okay? The Timbukoi live far, far away. I don't have a map handy, but it's further than you can imagine, near the opposite side of the Outer Sea. You don't want them as your masters. But if you instead pay all tributes due right to me, well, as you know, I command the finest riders in the east and will be ready to defend your interests at a moment's notice. If the Timbukoi do send a man, then ask him to come and find me. I will deal with them, or perhaps have the desert do the work. I hope we can come to an agreement here, for the mutual benefit of we rulers, and of course on behalf of the people, both yours and ours. My attack on Segestica quickly turned into a field battle because the enemy sallied. I believe they're scripted to sally if you have an artillery advantage, which of course we do, and I'm using it right now in order to pound their lines as they advance slowly across this open battlefield, and they're going to be advancing all the way in to a line of legionaries, a line that's going to be very difficult for them to get through, and plenty of missile support behind. They are going to throw javelins in on the charge. That's probably the most effective part of their battle plan, because once they get into melee combat, they're going to be victim to my superior equipment and training. So in they go, they're going to try anyway, and they're going to be showering us with javelins from their back lines because they brought several javelin units, and that might do damage, but again, these melee units not going to do much. And we can speed up the process of killing them with flank attacks. Here we've got Germanic berserkers brought all the way from Germany, you wouldn't have guessed, coming in onto the flank of this spear unit, and of course they're going to whip their way through them, no problems at all there. So very nice. They are taking javelins, unfortunately, from the unit right next to them, but we're going to end their reign of terror right away, bringing in these cavalry who are sitting behind the enemy's army to just wipe them out. I do have to do a little bit of micro with the cavalry because the enemy actually does have these spear units that didn't go into the battle. So we need to keep running away from them and just make sure they don't catch our cav, but we're basically kiting them away from the battle, and then the artillery just fires at them and brings them down. So it's all going well. These units here, these javelins, were doing damage to the line, but we're going to charge forwards now in order to get them to skirmish so that they can't keep throwing, and then eventually I can just catch up with them with cav later on and take them out. So easy peasy, and the rest of their infantry just being taken out with no particular difficulty. So there we go, that was a nice easy win against Illyria. Segestica is going to be taken, the Auto Resolve telling us we were going to lose like 40% of our army, and once again proven that you can do it for basically no losses and you don't even really have to do any orders or strategies. So there we go. Another bit of Illyria taken away from them. They're actually starting to get quite weak now. The loss of all these territories going to be hammering them down. They're now much smaller than us. Now what I should have done here was actually liberate the faction that used to live here, but unfortunately I just chose to occupy without really thinking about it, then immediately realised that Segestica is in the middle of a Scordisci region, province, meaning it's going to be quite hard for me to hold it because the Scordisci don't have my culture, so it's going to make it annoying public order wise, but unfortunately once you've actually occupied a place, there's no way to force it to be given to someone else, to many people's complaints. So we're just going to have to do our best to start investing money in it in order to convert it over to a Hellenic sort of settlement and then try and hold it if Illyria makes a counterattack. So in their turn, they do move forces up near Segestica, but they're actually just defending that position there. So it's possible they don't intend to counterattack, or it's possible they're waiting for reinforcements. It's hard to know because we don't have much intelligence on what's going on in their territory. But overall, not particularly worried about what Illyria has to offer right now. I think it's just a case of finishing them off. Now, this faction, the Massalia, which I've been calling the Massalia for the entire campaign, rather foolishly, is asking me for peace, and I thought, well, we're not going to get peace for free, considering you declared war on me and I beat you. So I asked them to stop being Carthage's client state, and they refused that offer, so I just threw the deal out the window, because that's only the really thing I think they could offer me that could be interesting. So at the start of the next turn, Cleandros getting blackmailed in some way. Very, very expensive to counter those rumours, would be like a third of my treasury, so I decided not to bother. He'll just take the Gravitas hit. Not that it really matters, thanks to that glitch with the politics discussed earlier in the series. Now I noticed that Sparta had renamed themselves the Hellenic League, and I think it's because they confederated with Knossos here on this island. So only a very small confederation, adding a single region to their territory, but interesting, Sparta expanding their influence. They're not even that big, they're just very powerful and very present on the map. Split between a sort of core empire in Greece and Macedonia, and then some more over in Anatolia in the east, which they sort of conquered randomly over there against their various enemies. So my next move was to get Pyrrhus, who was hanging around near Sparta, who was supposed to be taking out Egyptian fleets who have now disappeared, to go and just find some new targets. He's going to go down towards Egypt itself and see if he can perhaps blockade a port or two, which might deny the Egyptians a whole load of income if we're very lucky. Epinetus is now able to finish his journey to Seleucia, running all the way down there, and the Egyptians still haven't attacked, which I didn't expect, so I don't know what they're doing. We need to get a spy over to try and have a look, and I'm also going to give him some of those great Mesopotamian cav to help him out. This is what the Illyrians called home. What a shame we called them friends for so long, and yet we allowed them to live like this. They've done the temples reasonably, but everything else, ghastly taste, and still more ghastly comforts. I'm sure the Timokoi will come in to help eventually, but I think it's worth putting some coin down on the work right away. Besides, what better way to win the approval of these locals than to bring them the fruits of our knowledge? How about this? Promise all freeholders 3 days of labour to construct or upgrade their properties as they see fit, all chargeable to me. A little boost and these lands could really be something. Ask the men to help out. Got to keep fit while we're here. Enemies on the way, rumour has it. Back with Epaphroditos, the Aryans have been kind enough to bring up an army to actually support my attack on Egypt here. So now we have a gigantic advantage. I can just finish them off thanks to that army filled with cavalry coming in to support. We're going to occupy this territory since it's part of Parthia, which we've already started capturing. And conveniently for me, it's already really Hellenistic and has all the right buildings thanks to Egypt's culture. So very handy indeed. So Epaphroditos can't move since he's now occupied a settlement, but there's no reason for him to stay around. I'll move him as soon as possible. So I thought I'd take a little look at the general disposition of the factions around me, and you can see that in the east we're really secure up to the edge of the map, and it's actually a push west that is now required, so that's quite nice to have that focus. And then I spotted this little strip of land owned by the Hellenic League in Italy. I thought, what's going on there? It seems they've come in and captured Neapolis there, so that's sort of inconvenient because it means I can't conquer all of Italia and I can't push down quite as easily to hit more Illyrian settlements, but perhaps that doesn't really matter because taking Italia isn't ultimately important to my goals. I'm more interested in actually taking Iberia. And the first stage in that, of course, is going to be to take Tarico, and I was thinking we could do a siege assault, but you can see the balance bar so far in our favour, getting more and more in our favour every turn because the enemy is taking double attrition from the fact we have them at siege by land and sea. So I thought we might as well actually just auto-resolve and take this one, and then we can jump back over to Rome where the situation's a bit more even as we saw earlier, and do a siege assault there instead. So there we go, we just take Tarico. The loss is strangely concentrated in the backup armies. Eurysthenes' main army not taking all that much damage despite theoretically leading that attack, so I don't know what happened there. But anyway, he is now inside the settlement. It's also a settlement that's got lots of buildings we can already use, so we don't have to spend much money or time converting it over, which is nice. Now the claws of the Peak under Gnothus are going to start heading out because, as far as I know, there are no other Carthaginian armies in Iberia, because if they were, they probably would have attacked us already. So we might as well just go around and start sweeping the place up. With the fleet, I'm thinking I'm going to put it into Eol, just because Carthage has shown an unusual fascination with taking Eol, so we might as well garrison it some more with that fleet to make it easier to defend, and being garrisoned will hopefully increase the speed at which it replenishes its crew after the losses taken in that fight. Now for Eustochus here in Sergestica, we have a little bit of an issue. He's taking attrition, and that's because of weather conditions in this province. Now the usual way to deal with this is to just put one foot outside the province and you're no longer affected by them. But unfortunately for me, in this case, my movement points are reduced by the weather effect, and that actually means I can't leave the province. The only way I can get out of this region is to go into the region to the east, which is also in the same province, so we'll have the same debuff. And that means there's actually no way for me to escape this attrition. Even staying in the settlement doesn't help out at all, so we're probably just going to have to take those losses and then stay in the settlement another turn to get all those men back, which is very unfortunate. Now jumping back over to the east, Actor, who is no longer needed to go and support Epiphoratos, needs a new mission, and I decided that with him I could send him down to Charax to start setting up a land siege to complement Herodotus' sea blockade, and we might actually be able to get the Egyptians to leave. We might even be able to assault the settlement and take it. Since we have so many horse archers, the enemy might not be able to deal with just constant attacks from missile units. But before any of that, my next priority is to come and take Rome. We've got 2 stacks of enemies inside and 2 stacks of allies outside. In fact, we've got 2 and a bit stacks, because as you can see on the left there, the Spartans get involved in this fight from Neapolis, and that means the balance bar is actually further in our favour than I thought it was going to be. But the downside is we don't have enough siege equipment. However, if I started building more siege equipment to make it a more guaranteed way to get inside the walls, the enemy would take so much attrition just from the siege that the battle would become too easy. So in order to have at least somewhat of a fair fight, I'm going to make the attack with just the ladders that I have now, and we'll see that big battle next time. The route for communications to reach Mesopotamia or Parthia was long and dangerous. Riders bearing messages would be taken by ship from Massalia to the eastern shores of the Black Sea, from where they could make a difficult journey through the mountains and along the western coast of the Caspian Sea to finally arrive in Massalian lands. The risk of these ventures gave the eastern territories de facto independence, a leisure most appreciated by the Massalian officials themselves. It was also a boon for Aria and Bactria, the allied states who were able to avoid being pressured into accepting the Drachma, while still benefiting directly from the spoils of the Drachma Wars.